Hey guys, Chef Ro here. Today I'm going to show you how to form gnocchi the traditional way. Now I have another way of doing it also where you use a piping bag, and that is a little quicker, a little easier, but it is a little more rustic. Translation, not quite as even, and it doesn't have the ridges which catch that beautiful sauce that you're making. So I've made some potato gnocchi dough, okay, and the way that you know your dough is ready to go is basically, you touch it. Okay, if you can touch it and it doesn't stick to your hands completely, a little bit of dampness isn't the worst thing because you want to try and avoid adding flour wherever possible. It just makes them heavier. As soon as it barely comes together as a dough, you're ready to go. But the longer you let it sit here, that flour will hydrate and it'll just get it wetter and wetter and wetter, and you're going to have to keep adding flour and adding flour. So you need to work with it as soon as you possibly can. You can see it's already starting to get wet just sitting here, okay? Now I like to use cake flour as dusting flour. Okay, so I'm going to use cake flour and just lightly dust. You could also use like something like a rice flour or something that doesn't have a lot of gluten content so that it doesn't add a lot of gluten to this. It just dries it out a bit. And all you're going to do is you go back to, remember when you were a kid and you played with Play-Doh? You're making a snake, okay? That's all you do. Make a rope. Notice how I'm not pushing very heavily. I'm just barely gliding my hands across. Any pressure down whatsoever is going to make it stick to your hands, and that's what's going to cause it to get heavy, and you're going to have to keep adding flour. If you just push across and back, it will stretch on its own without sticking to your hands. Then I use a bench scraper, handy dandy little thing for a million things, and you just come along and cut them to whatever size you're going to use, okay? Now, you can just leave them like this, and this is a perfectly acceptable way to use your gnocchi dough. Get some of this excess off my fingers here, okay? You can just cook them straight like that, but if you want the little ridges, you can use a gnocchi board, which I unfortunately don't have, or you can even use the back of a fork. The back of a fork is going to be wider ridges than the gnocchi board, which is really, really fine ridges, but it's a flick and roll motion. So you push down and then you flick it and roll it. And that's why, if you ever noticed that it looks like it's folded on the back side of a gnocchi, it's because you push. It helps if you don't have stuff already stuck to your thumbs. And then roll. Okay, and then you've got your ridged gnocchi. All right, and again, you don't have to do this. A gnocchi board's a little bit easier to work with than a fork, but you can just push and roll. Okay, and then you've got your ridges. Now, once you've got your gnocchi either like this or your ones with the ridges, all you have to do is put them on a sheet tray, flat, and put them in the freezer and freeze them solid. Now you can cook them right away, obviously, but this is a large process. Making gnocchi is a time-consuming process. It's not hard, just time-consuming, okay? Why not make a huge bunch of them, freeze them, and then you can take them straight from the freezer and put them into a pot of boiling water, add on about a minute of cook time, and you're ready to go. But you do have to use this shaping method. The piping bag will not work for freezing. So you shape them, and what you can see, I'm going to show you, I've got it on a tray here. So you can see here that I've shaped, these are my sweet potato gnocchi. I've shaped them, I've placed them on a flour dusted parchment lined tray, put them in the freezer, and now they are frozen solid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these and put only as much as my family would eat into a Ziploc baggie, get all the air out, and put it back in the freezer. Okay? Once they've frozen solid, you don't have to worry about them going back and sticking back together on you. Then you get your pot of water simmering, right? Bring it all the way to a boil, salt it down to a simmer so that it doesn't break them apart. Drop those things in. Once they float to the top, give them 30 to 60 seconds, then they're ready to be pulled out. Now, the one thing to be very careful about is you cannot cheat the amount of water if you're using frozen gnocchi. You need a big pot of water. So that's why you see I have my big pot out ready to go for the potato gnocchi. If you do not have a big pot of water, when you put frozen gnocchi in there, it'll drop the temperature of the water too much, and it'll take too long to cook, and the outside will be overcooked, and it'll start to get weird and fall apart on you. So you do need to use a very large pot, And I would, of that tray that I have, I'd only do about half of that at a time at most. You can cook them in batches. They cook very quickly, so you can cook them in batches, no problem. But you do need a lot of water, little product, because that frozen stuff will drop that temperature too quickly. Okay, so now you know how to shape gnocchi the more traditional way. You choose your favorite.